This is a tool that tells a story, not just of its own purpose, but of an entire way of life that has simply vanished. Take a good look at this one. It's a heavy, almost brutal piece of iron, with a wide, flared head on one side and a sharp, pointed beak on the other. The handle, what's left of it, is rough-hewn wood, stained dark with age and countless hours of work. It feels substantial in the hand, designed for force and precision. It's not a hammer, not an axe, not quite a pick. Most people, even those who fancy themselves handy, will draw a blank. What could such an odd implement possibly have been used for? It's a whisper from a time when every small town hummed with a rhythm of trades now silent, and tools like this were absolutely indispensable. Today, we're going on a journey back in time, unearthing 9 vanished trades that once defined American small towns and the ingenious tools that made them possible. We'll start with number 9. Number 9, the cobbler and the lasting pincers. Imagine a world where buying new shoes wasn't an everyday occurrence, and a good pair of boots was an investment meant to last years, not months. This was the domain of the cobbler, a cornerstone of every community. His workshop, often fragrant with leather and polish, was where shoes were mended, reshaped, and given new life. Among his most vital tools were the lasting pincers. These weren't just any pliers. They were specially designed with wide, flat jaws, sometimes serrated, and a distinctive heel, or fulcrum, on the lower jaw that allowed the cobbler to pry and stretch leather with incredible leverage. The scene would unfold like this. A worn leather upper, perhaps from a farmer's work boot, would be carefully placed over a wooden shoe form, called a last. The cobbler would grasp the edge of the leather with his lasting pincers, pulling and stretching it over the last, then tacking it down. The pincer's design allowed him to exert immense force to shape the stubborn leather, molding it perfectly to the last contours, ensuring a snug, comfortable fit for the wearer. The surprising detail? Many lasting pincers had a small hammer face on one of the handles, a clever addition for driving in those tiny tacks. The trade of the cobbler, and tools like the lasting pincers, began to fade with the rise of mass-produced footwear in factories during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It became cheaper to buy new than to repair, and the skilled hands of the cobblers slowly vanished. Moving on to number 8, we step into a different kind of workshop, one filled with the scent of wood shavings and the steady thud of mallets. Number 8, the cooper and the crows. Long before plastic and cardboard boxes dominated packaging, everything from flour to whiskey was stored and transported in wooden barrels or casks. The cooper was the master craftsman behind these essential containers, a trade requiring immense skill and specialized tools. One of the most intricate was the crows, a tool almost as unique as the barrels themselves. A crows isn't a single tool, but rather a family of tools, some resembling a plane, others more like a compass with a blade. Its purpose was singular, to cut the precise groove, called the crows, around the inside of each end of the barrel staves. This groove was where the barrel heads, or lids, would fit snugly, forming a watertight seal. Imagine the cooper, having painstakingly shaped and bent the staves into the barrel's iconic bulging form, now turning his attention to the ends. He would use the crows, sometimes a handheld tool that he'd rotate around the barrel's rim, other times a larger bench-mounted jig, to cut that perfect circular channel. The surprising payoff here is the precision required. The crows had to be cut at just the right depth and angle to allow for the slight expansion and contraction of the wood, and to ensure the head was secure without cracking the staves. A poorly cut crows meant a leaky barrel and a ruined product. The cooper's trade, and the crows, began their decline with the invention of metal containers, glass bottles, and later, the cardboard box, all offering cheaper, faster alternatives to wooden barrels for storage and transport. It's fascinating, isn't it? How a single tool can unlock a whole world of forgotten skills. Now for number 7. Number 7, the lamplighter and the lamplighter's pole. Before electricity illuminated every street corner, cities and towns relied on gas or oil lamps to pierce the night. The lamplighter was the essential figure who brought these lights to life and extinguished them at dawn. His most iconic tool was the lamplighter's pole, a deceptively simple yet highly specialized instrument. This pole was typically long, often 8 to 12 feet, made of wood or lightweight metal, and crucially, equipped with a specific mechanism at its end. For gas lamps, this mechanism usually involved a small, hooked lever designed to turn a valve, along with a small flame or pilot light at the very tip, used to ignite the gas. For oil lamps, it might have been a snuffer and a mechanism to lift the glass chimney. Picture the lamplighter at dusk, walking his route through the cobblestone streets. He would stop at each lamp post, reach up with his pole, engaging the valve with a practiced flick of the wrist. A soft hiss, a quick spark or pilot flame, and whoosh, the gas lamp would spring to life, casting a warm glow on the darkening street. The surprising detail is the sheer athleticism and memory required. A lamplighter had to know his route intimately, often lighting hundreds of lamps in a short span, in all weather conditions, ensuring safety and visibility for the community. The lamplighter's trade, and his pole, became obsolete with the widespread adoption of electric streetlights, first in the late 19th century and then across America throughout the early 20th century. A silent, glowing revolution indeed. Did your grandfather or great-grandfather ever tell stories about lamplighters, or perhaps even own a tool from one of these vanished trades? Tell me about it in the comments below. For now, let's move to number 6. Number 6. The Iceman and the Ice Tongs. Before every home had a refrigerator, keeping food cold was a daily challenge, solved by the Iceman. His arrival was a welcome sight, especially in the heat of summer, and his essential tool was the pair of ice tongs. These weren't just any tongs. They were robust, often made of forged steel, with two sharply pointed, inward-curving arms hinged together. The design allowed the Iceman to securely grip large, heavy blocks of ice, typically weighing 25 to 100 pounds. Imagine the Iceman's horse-drawn wagon pulling up to your home. He'd climb into the back, where huge blocks of ice, cut from frozen lakes in winter or manufactured in ice houses, were insulated with sawdust. With a practiced motion, he'd select the size block you needed, grasp it firmly with his ice tongs, and hoist it onto his shoulder, often using a leather shoulder pad. The surprising payoff? The balance and strength required. He would carry these dripping, heavy blocks through homes and upstairs to place them in the customer's insulated icebox. The points of the tongs dug just enough into the ice to provide a secure grip without shattering it. The Iceman's trade, and his indispensable tongs, vanished rapidly with the widespread adoption of electric refrigerators in homes during the 1920s and 1930s, rendering the daily delivery of ice unnecessary. From the chill of the icebox to the heat of the forge, we come to number 5. Number 5. The Farrier and the Hoof Nipper. The farrier was not just a blacksmith who shod horses. He was a skilled artisan, part veterinarian, part craftsman. In an era when horses were the primary mode of transportation and labor, the farrier was vital to a town's functioning. Among his many specialized tools, the hoof nipper stands out. This formidable tool resembles a pair of large, heavy-duty pliers, but with specially hardened, curved blades designed for one purpose: to trim the excess growth from a horse's hoof. Picture the scene at the farrier's forge or stable. A horse, perhaps a mighty draft horse or a swift riding pony, stands patiently. The farrier, with a strong grip, lifts the horse's hoof, carefully inspecting it. He then takes his hoof nippers, often a two-handed operation due to their size and the thickness of the hoof, and makes precise, controlled cuts. The surprising aspect is the nuance involved. The farrier had to understand equine anatomy, trimming the hoof just enough to maintain proper balance and health without cutting into the sensitive quick. After trimming, the hoof would be rasped smooth and a new, custom-fitted horseshoe applied. The farrier's trade, and the constant need for hoof nippers, declined dramatically with the advent of the automobile and motorized farm equipment in the early to mid-20th century, replacing horses as the dominant power source. Now, let's move our focus to a different kind of craftsman at number 4. Number 4. The Tinker and the Soldering Iron. The tinker was the itinerant repairman of yesteryear, traveling from town to town, village to village, fixing household goods. His cry of "pots to mend" was a familiar sound, and his trade was all about making things last. While he carried a variety of small hand tools, the cornerstone of his trade, especially for repairing metalware, was his soldering iron. This wasn't an electric soldering iron like we know today. These were heavy, often copper-headed irons with long handles, heated directly in a small charcoal brazier or a specialized blow lamp. Imagine the tinker setting up his modest workspace in a town square or outside a farmhouse. A farmer's wife brings a leaky tin bucket or a pot with a hole. The tinker would fire up his brazier, heating his soldering iron until it glowed faintly. With a block of solder and a flux to clean the metal, he would expertly melt the solder with the hot iron, patching the hole, making the pot watertight once more. The surprising insight is the ingenuity of these self-sufficient artisans. They carried their entire workshop with them, a testament to adaptability and resourcefulness. The tinker's trade, and the need for their portable repairs, declined with the rise of mass production and cheaper manufactured goods. It became more economical to simply buy a new pot or bucket than to have an old one repaired, and the tinker's roving repair shop slowly disappeared. From repairing pots to shaping metal with a different kind of force, we delve into number 3. Number 3, the blacksmith and the fuller. While the blacksmith isn't entirely vanished, his ubiquity in every small town certainly is, and many of his specialized tools have faded into obscurity. Among the more intriguing is the fuller. This isn't a hammer, though it's used with one. A fuller is a type of chisel-like tool, often with a rounded or half-round edge, typically designed to be struck by a hammer. Its purpose was to full or draw out metal, creating grooves, depressions, or channels without removing material. It was used to thin sections, create shoulders, or prepare the metal for bending or joining. Envision the blacksmith's shop, filled with the clang of hammer on anvil, the roar of the forge, and the smell of coal smoke. The blacksmith, working a piece of glowing red-hot iron, might place a fuller on the metal. With a steady hand, he would strike the fuller repeatedly with his heavy hammer. The fuller's curved edge would displace the hot metal, elongating it or creating a precise groove, perhaps for the spine of a knife, or to define a decorative scrollwork. The surprising detail here is the sheer skill required to use a fuller effectively, understanding how the metal would flow under the impact, shaping it precisely without causing cracks or weakening the piece. The decline of the generalist village blacksmith and the common use of fullers is tied to the Industrial Revolution. Machine shops and factories began to produce standardized metal parts more efficiently, making the individualized, hand-forged work of the blacksmith less economically viable for everyday items. Now, for number 2, a trade dedicated to elegance and style. Number 2, the milliner and the hat stretcher. Before ready-to-wear clothing and accessories became commonplace, the milliner was the arbiter of fashion, especially for women's hats. Every small town had at least one, creating bespoke headwear for all occasions. The milliner's workshop was a delightful array of fabrics, feathers, ribbons, and flowers. One of her less glamorous, but absolutely essential, tools was the hat stretcher. This was typically a wooden device, often made of 2 or more pieces that could be expanded by turning a central screw or crank. It was designed to gently stretch and shape the inner band of a hat, ensuring a perfect, comfortable fit for the customer. Imagine a lady visiting the milliner, her head measured for a new bonnet. The milliner, having crafted the hat, would then adjust the inner band. If it was a little too tight, she would insert the hat stretcher into the crown of the hat, carefully turning the screw to expand the wooden form. This would subtly stretch the hat's material, typically felt or straw, to precisely the desired size. The surprising payoff is the personalized touch this tool allowed. It wasn't just about making a hat, but making a hat that felt as if it were made for you. The milliner's trade, and the everyday use of tools like the hat stretcher, began to wane with the rise of mass-produced clothing and hats, and changing fashion trends that favored simpler headwear or none at all, particularly after the mid-20th century. And finally, our number 1 vanished trade, a master of complex wooden artistry. Number 1, the wheelwright and the spoke shave. In an age before paved roads and internal combustion engines, the wheelwright was a vital craftsman, responsible for building and repairing every wooden wheel that rolled through town, for wagons, carriages, carts, and farm implements. His work demanded precision, strength, and an intimate understanding of wood. Among his highly specialized tools, the spoke shave stands out as a beautiful example of form following function. It's a small, handheld planing tool with 2 handles and a short blade set at an angle, designed specifically for shaping spokes and other curved wooden components. Picture the wheelwright in his bustling shop, surrounded by stacks of lumber, half-finished felloes, and spokes. He would take a rough-cut spoke blank, often of strong, resilient oak, and clamp it to his workbench. Gripping the spoke shave by its two handles, he would draw or push the tool along the spoke's length. The keen blade would peel away thin shavings, gradually shaping the spoke from a square peg into its elegantly tapered, round form, ready to bear the weight and stresses of a rolling wheel. The surprising depth of this tool's use is in the sheer variety of curves it could create, allowing the wheelwright to craft spokes that were not only strong but also beautiful, each one perfectly balanced within the wheel. The wheelwright's trade, and the ubiquitous need for the spoke shave, collapsed almost entirely with the invention and mass production of the automobile in the early 20th century. Wooden wheels gave way to steel and rubber, and an entire art form, and its tools, simply rolled into history. These tools, these trades, they whisper stories of the hands that shaped America, of ingenuity, hard work, and communities built on skill and necessity. They remind us that progress, while often beneficial, sometimes leaves behind a profound richness of human endeavor. If you guessed it before the reveal, you know your history. Subscribe, a forgotten tool rediscovered every day.